Hello and welcome. You're watching Race to Power. My name is Mohammed Saleh. And on the show today, the American Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth appears to be falling headfirst into one controversy after another. After that very contentious signal gate twice over, it is now emerged that Pete Hegseth, believe it or not, had an unsecured internet connection installed in his Pentagon office. And in Canada, it's just 3 days before the final voting day, but the overarching point of discussion remains Donald Trump and his repeated barbs at the Canadian nation. Will who deals with Donald Trump better now be the differential on which the Canadians will elect their next Prime Minister? But let's, of course, start with this big story from India, where India's Home Minister has chaired a high-level meeting in New Delhi today on the steps to implement decisions taken on holding the Indus water treaty between India and Pakistan in abeyance. The 65-year-old treaty was declared suspended on Wednesday by India's Cabinet Committee on Security, citing Pakistan's alleged role in the pahalgam terror attack. And today's meeting has decided on steps to put together a roadmap on the implementation of actions on Pakistan vis-a-vis the landmark treaty. The Water Resources Minister was present at the meeting besides other stakeholders. Now, in the Indus water treaty that was signed in 1960, India had received control of the eastern rivers, that is Ravi, Beas and Satluj, while Pakistan had got the western rivers, that is Indus, Jhelum and Chenab. Now, despite being entitled to the use of 18% of the basin's waters, India currently uses only around 10% of the water. The suspension marks a shift at India's strategy, with plans now underway to assert greater control over water flows into Pakistan. With the treaty now suspended, India is, of course, expected India is, of course, looking at the options that it currently has, and this is one of the options that India has, of course, decided upon, to suspend the Indus water treaty. Now, remember, India had been very generous in terms of the clauses that had been a part of this treaty, and now, after 65 long years, this is a treaty that has been suspended by India. This is a treaty that had withstood even the wars that Pakistan had waged with India on this issue. And it now remains to be seen as to what the fallout of this will be. Because remember, this is a very serious step that India has, of course, taken by suspending the Indus Waters Treaty. For a upper riparian state to say that the treaty is now off is a very serious matter. This was a treaty that was signed in 1960. The World Bank had mediated this treaty, and now India is mulling on the next steps that it will take. Remember, there is a water crisis that is already present in Pakistan. Pakistan has a problem of extremes. There is a water crisis. At the same time, there's also a problem of extreme flooding that Pakistan witnesses now and then. And Pakistan's hydropower supply is also potentially at risk. Nearly about 30% of its power comes from the hydroelectric dams that it has on these rivers. India is very carefully calibrating its response in terms of how it wants to proceed further in terms of taking things forward. Pakistan, of course, has been pretty adamant in the aftermath of the Pahalgam terror attack. It has not yet condemned the fact that 27 innocent tourists were gunned down in this brutal massacre. All right, now to give us more updates in terms of what's, of course, happening between India and Pakistan at the moment, we're joined by our my colleague Siddhant Sibil, who's joining us with more details on this. Siddhant, this is a big moment, the fact that the Indus Waters Treaty, that it stood for 65 plus years. It was signed in 1960. India has now decided to suspend it. Give us the implications of this, because this is a treaty that had been in presence even though India fought wars with Pakistan. So it was good even during the time of war. But now things are so serious that India has decided to suspend it. What are the implications?
Well, essentially, we know that when it comes to the Indus Water Treaty, India has essentially put it on a suspension of freeze. There was a meeting that was led by the Indian Home Minister, Amit Shah, where other ministers were also present. And it is clear that India is not going to be part of the Indus Water Treaty. What next, essentially, in terms of will India build the dams? Because what does the suspension of Indus Water Treaty means? It means that India is not going to share any data on water flow. India is not going to be part of any meetings as was stipulated under the Indus Water Treaty of 1960. But also, India is free to use the water. Currently, the water flows its natural path. Will India build dams is the big question, because the Pakistan side has made it clear that it will see at the entire development, if this happens, as an act of war.
All right, indeed, Siddhant Sibil, thank you very much for joining us with all those details then. Let's now shift our attention to what is happening in the United States of America, where the American Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is finding himself deeper into controversy. The latest reports have put Hegseth back in hot waters of the signal gate, and according to the US media reports, Hegseth got an unsecured, believe it or not, this is the man who's the Defense Secretary of the United States, and he gets an unsecured internet connection installed in his Pentagon office. Additionally, the Defense Secretary used the chat application Signal on a personal device. The reports have come at a time when the Pentagon is currently investigating other information leaks from within the Department of Defense and has put several officials on leave, or it has suspended them. Now, Pete Hegseth and other top leaders of the Trump administration have come under the spotlight when a journalist revealed that he was inadvertently added to a Signal chat group that shared sensitive details of America's attack plans on Yemen. Another reporter stated that Hegseth had 3 computers in his office, including a personal one. This despite a ban on carrying electronic devices due to the risk of spyware and hacking. Now, the existence of unsecured internet connection is the latest revelation about Pete Hegseth's use of unclassified applications. It's also raised the possibility that sensitive defense information could have been put at risk of potential hacking or surveillance. However, Trump has decided to stand by Pete Hegseth and other top officials, dismissing the scandal as nothing but a witch hunt, and has argued that his Pentagon chief, according to him, is doing a great job. Now, the American president has said that he'll also do a sit-down interview with the Atlantic's editor, Jeffrey Goldberg, who was mistakenly added to the government's official group chat. So this is a huge controversy within the United States of America. Pete Hegseth is, of course, the Defense Secretary of the United States of America. He was someone who's handpicked by Donald Trump, but he seems to be in all kinds of problems. It's not just Signalgate, but it's Signalgate twice over. And also the fact that he's broken protocol, taking his wife and other members of his family for meetings which are essentially about classified information. And the fact that there was an editor-in-chief of The Atlantic who was added to a chat group, a Signal chat group, in which the Defense Secretary and the who's who of the Trump cabinet were present, and they discussed the war plans on striking targets in Yemen, has brought the spotlight on how effective are members of the Trump's cabinet. And Pete Hegseth at this moment is in the eye of the storm. The controversy where Hegseth reportedly got an unsecured internet connection installed in his office in the Pentagon. And it beggars belief as to what the logic of something like this could be, considering the kind of sensitive data that Pete Hegseth, as the Defense Secretary, would be dealing with. The fact that he got an unsecured internet connection perhaps speaks at Hegseth's approach towards his job. These are questions that are being raised. Is Hegseth taking his job seriously enough? Now, the American president says that he backs Pete Hegseth. He still says that he is doing a great job. It is 3 months into Donald Trump's presidency, and it's one controversy after another that Pete Hegseth seems to be getting into. And it now remains to be seen as to how long will Donald Trump continue to hold on to Pete Hegseth, or will he decide to drop him like a hot potato? Now, Donald Trump and his administration are inching closer to the 100-day milestone in office, and with time, more and more American citizens are concerned about the country's economic future as well as constitutional freedom. The single biggest issue making headlines has been Trump's tariff war on 185 countries and also the long-term impact of the standoff on commoners. A recent poll by the Associated Press NORC Center reveals that nearly about 60% of the American adults are extremely or very concerned about the rising grocery prices. Now, this concern also extends beyond food, with 50% of the Americans also being worried about the cost of big-ticket items like cars, phones and appliances. Now, companies across various sectors are grappling with the impact of tariffs on their bottom lines, particularly in industries like food and beverage, pharmaceuticals and household goods. Now, several major companies are adjusting their earning expectations due to the rising costs linked to tariffs. Procter & Gamble, the maker of household staples, has also lowered its annual financial outlook after a slowdown in sales. Now, PepsiCo has also downgraded its earnings forecast, citing a 25% tariff on imported aluminium that is driving up costs for beverage makers. Pharmaceutical giant Merck expects tariffs to cost about $200 million this year, prompting a cut to its earnings guidance. The economic uncertainty created by tariffs is not limited to consumer goods and pharmaceuticals alone. American Airlines have also withdrawn their earnings forecast for the year, reflecting concerns that tariffs could in fact influence consumer spending on travel. Similarly, Southwest Airlines is scaling back its flight schedule due to the reduced demand. Meanwhile, Dow Chemicals is delaying a $1 billion facility expansion in Canada as tariff-driven uncertainty forces companies to rethink on their investments. The markets and investor sentiment has remained pretty cautious after the US president first announced reciprocal tariffs on the 2nd of April, before declaring a sudden 90-day pause, but then singled out its trade escalation with China. Now, joining us on the broadcast, we have Mr. John Rosamondo, who is the president of the Viking Research Associates, geostrategist and also an expert on national security. He's joining us live on this broadcast. Mr. Rosamondo, this is a question that I'm pretty sure a lot of Americans will start asking now. The fact that Pete Hegseth reportedly had an unsecured internet connection installed in his Pentagon office. Is there any logic to it, or are we looking at someone who's a defense secretary was perhaps not serious about his job?
Well, I just think that there's a lot of questions to be asked there. I mean, I don't understand why he would do such a thing, considering that, the Chinese, Russians, so forth, if they could easily hack into it, such an unsecured thing, although he would probably say he wasn't conducting any unclassified business or anything of that sort on the server. So I really think that there's a lot of things to be asked here. However, I think President Trump still has his full confidence in Secretary Hegseth.
Trump has, of course, said that he has full confidence, but how long do you think Donald Trump will be able to hold on and defend Pete Hegseth? Because this is not the first controversy. There have been twice reports that he was using a Signal group chat for discussing what was effectively classified information. How long can Donald Trump hold on to Pete Hegseth before he decides that he's too much of a hot potato?
Well, let's put it this way. President Trump put Pete Hegseth in for an agenda to end the politicization of the U.S. military and to restore the fighting spirit. So while President Trump was burned in his first term, he wants to stick with people who he knows are loyalists. So I don't see Pete Hegseth going anywhere anytime soon.
All right, we'll have to leave there. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Rosmondo, for joining us with that perspective there.
Thank you.
So as the Trump administration's 100-day mark draws closer, the Americans are weighing in on the U.S. president's performance so far and what the country's future would look like under him. Listen in to what the Americans think.
Are you scared for our future? I mean, absolutely. I'm scared for my entire generation. You know, it's for me currently, I'm in college. I go to El Camino College, and I am scared that if I do get out of college and I do graduate, what type of jobs will there be there for me? I'm trying to find a job currently, and I've applied to like 100+ applications.
Excited for the future. I'm excited to see how it's all going to pan out. I definitely think that the more that we're going to be able to start doing the fracking and cutting down on a lot of the waste that we have in our government and everything will get us to a better spot.
I'm a trans person, and a lot of my protections and a lot of my rights are being taken away. I went to get my social security changed, and I could change my name, but they wouldn't allow us to change the gender anymore.
I appreciate that he's doing something. I don't know if it's good things yet, you know, but I like that there's someone that's trying to, or at least pretending to make a difference. Hopefully it's ends up being good things for everybody, but time will tell.
A lot of things are making me nervous. Anti-immigration policy from him, also the language and divisive rhetoric that he's using, the exclusionary rhetoric, trying to divide, citizens along racial and gendered bylines. And also it makes me, think about kind of like just the hateful language that is encoded in the way that he speaks and what he's trying to do.
I believe that he's restoring law and order within our country. He's reviving the economy, and he's bringing back business to America through manufacturing. So again, I'm putting a strong emphasis on business, but I believe Americans' main concern is the stability of our economy. And I believe that all of his initiatives are pointing towards a healthy America in the future.
Canada heads to elections in just about 3 days. Well, the country has registered a record number in terms of advanced polling. The final in-person voting day is on the 28th of April. And candidates are making a last-ditch effort in this tight race. Both main parties in the running have pulled out all stops to convince the Canadian voters to their abilities in dealing with the American President Donald Trump's tariff war. The incumbent Prime Minister Mark Carney has raised the issue once again at an election rally in Canada's British Columbia region. Listen in.
Just yesterday, President Trump repeated his attacks on Canada. He said he doesn't want Canada, I'm quoting, to play any part in the American auto industry. So I'll be equally clear. This is Canada. We decide what happens here. Yesterday was more proof, as if any were needed, that the old relationship with the United States is over. And proof that we need to chart a new path. As I've been saying, this is a tragedy, but it's also our new reality. President Trump has been attacking Canada, America's closest ally, America's closest partner.
Well, the tariffs have become mainstream conversation. Other issues are also equally relevant for the voters. So let's take a look as to what the parties have promised to do if they are elected. An issue bigger than tariff is the years-long cost of living crisis in Canada. Parties have made several poll promises to provide relief to people. The Liberal Party has promised 1% cut in tax rates for the lowest tax bracket. Additionally, the ruling party has also promised to scrap federal sales tax for the first time home buyers who are purchasing a home under 1 million Canadian dollars. The Conservative Party has also promised to cut tax rates from 15% to 12.75%. The Conservatives are also pushing to remove sales tax on Canada-made cars in addition to new homes The NDP, led by Jagmeet Singh, has promised to scrap sales tax on essential goods and services such as energy, phones and internet bills. The left-wing party has also promised to double the income for the Canadians with disabilities. In a major breakthrough, the Democratic Republic of Congo and the Rwanda-backed M23 rebel group have now agreed to a ceasefire. The announcement comes after the high-stakes negotiations in Doha, in which both sides committed to ending the hostilities and working towards a broader peace deal. The talks have come after Qatar brokered a meeting between the Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi and the Rwandan President Paul Kagame. In a joint statement, the two parties in fact called for an immediate end to the violence while rejecting the speech and urging the communities to respect the ceasefire. The statement has also described the talks as frank and constructive, but it was unclear if or when another round of talks will take place. But this is not the first time that peace has been promised. In August 2024, Angola had brokered a ceasefire that was backed by the regional forces. However, it crumbled within weeks as M23 fighters have intensified their attacks in eastern Congo, displacing millions. The decades-long conflict intensified in January since the M23 launched an unprecedented offensive, capturing Goma and Bukavu, the two largest cities of eastern Congo. The Congo has accused Rwanda of arming and also supporting the M23 rebels, while Rwanda has denied supporting the M23. For 2 years now, the M23 forces have been trying to establish control over the mineral-rich provinces in the region. So far, the conflict has displaced at least about 7 million people and has killed thousands more. And our correspondent Louisa Olani has sent us this report from Lagos in Nigeria. Listen in.
After months of escalating violence in eastern DR Congo, the country's government and the M23 rebel group have agreed to a ceasefire deal following talks in Qatar. The midweek announcement marks the first major step towards the escalation since peace negotiations resumed under the regional and international mediation. Reuters report that the agreement includes pledges to end fighting, denounce hate speech, and address the root causes of the conflict with the involvement of civil society. While the ceasefire offers a glimmer of hope, previous truces have failed to hold. Still, mediators are optimistic, describing this agreement as a turning point in efforts to stabilize the volatile region. From Lagos, Nigeria, Louisa Olani, WION World is One.
Let us take a look at some other developments that are also making news in the world of politics. The Danish intelligence agency has accused Russia of organizing a disinformation campaign targeting Greenland. Social media posts in January claimed that a Danish member of the parliament, Carsten Hong, is seeking Russian help to prevent Greenland from breaking free from Denmark. Now, the post included a doctored image of a Facebook post purportedly from Hong. The Danish intelligence agency says that the fake post came from an influencer who promotes a Russian agenda, particularly regarding Ukraine. The Brazil's former president, Fernando Collor de Mello, has been arrested after Brazil's Supreme Court upheld his conviction in a corruption and money laundering case. Rejecting his final appeal, Supreme Court ordered him to begin serving his sentence of 8 years and 10 months in prison. The Mello, in fact, served as the president from 1990 till 1992. Indicted on bribery charges, South Korea's former president Moon Jae-in has accused the prosecutors of abusing their power. The former president is accused of accepting a bribe through his former son-in-law's employer, the Thai Easter Jet. The company was reportedly controlled by a former MP from Moon's party who was allegedly seeking to gain favor with the then president. The supporters of the US president are in fact heading out to a burger place in Texas that is serving up a special Trump burger ahead of the administration's 100-day mark. Now, the owners and the visitors equally believe that the pain that America is now feeling is actually short-term pain, But in the long term, they believe that the United States under Donald Trump is on the right track. We'll leave you with these images. Thanks for watching.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
This week on Check It Out, we show you a new concept vehicle that's half robot, half motorbike. We also tell you how autonomous technology is helping Israeli military on the war front. And we introduce you to a bionic arm that can crawl on its own. This and more on WION World is One at these times.
On Wings this week, a voyage for new possibilities for India as cruise tourism is in focus for expansion. We feature what Rajasthan has in store for visitors as tourism surges in the state. And highlights of Easter celebrations worldwide, only on WION World is One.
The stress of our world can take a toll on our physical and emotional health. Here, in New York's Catskill Mountains, lies a luxurious place of healing called WION Wellness Center. The WION Wellness Center provides 500,000 square feet of natural methods to manage diabetes, hypertension, chronic pain, obesity, depression, anxiety, and other conditions. We use the traditions of centuries-old natural science from India, yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy in personalized programs that help you take charge of your own health. A minimum 5-day stay is recommended for best results. Book now at yo1.com.
Dive into the world of tokenization with me on Token Money Magnet, only on WION.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One.
Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching WION Fine Print with me, Molly Gambhir. A quick look first at the top stories making headlines around the world. Armed police and soldiers